I'm Amanda Knox, and you're listening to Hard Knocks. Welcome to yet another Ask Amanda Anything, where you can just literally ask me anything. I'm right here, open book. Just throw them out there. The weirder or the more personal, the better, I guess. Also, if you're a subscriber, you get your question gets prioritized. So if you haven't subscribed, do that subscribe-y thing.
And
yeah,
as before, I
go.
am Chris Robinson, Amanda's husband and creative partner in all things. And I'm here to playfully prod and poke Amanda to draw out her best answers. And as a reminder to all of you, these don't just have to be questions about Amanda. In fact, I think we prefer if these are questions about you. You might think of this as Ask Amanda's advice in that regard. So this first question, yeah.
And who knows what will come of it?
If anyone can tell you how to avoid prison. If anyone
has lived a life without
This comes to us from Chris K. from Substack. Hi, Amanda. I have a friend whose son in his mid-30s has a disability which can lead to complications in intimate body functions, weakness in walking, sometimes needs a wheelchair, some learning issues, etc. Theoretically, the medical cliche is that he can lead a full life with support for the ongoing issues and complications which can arise. However, his parents can hover too much, maybe sending mixed signals about whether they believe he can lead a full life. And the son had recent complications which are taking a while to fix up, and is feeling anger and asking existentially, why was I born and stuck with all this? I'm wondering what you'd say, Amanda. Thank you.
Yeah, great question. First of all, I would say, dude, that sucks. I'm really sorry that you're dealing with that. Not everyone is born with that shitty set of circumstances. So, one, I would acknowledge that it sucks. Two, I would suggest to him the obstacle is the opportunity thing. But what I would pose the question is, what do you have unique access to that no one else does because of what you have? So what you have is something that not everyone has to deal with. One way of looking at that is as something that's debilitating. Another way of looking at that is saying you have access to something that other people don't. So be curious. What is it that you have access to that no one else does? And how can you, frankly, exploit that? How can you be informed by what you experience and turn that into something valuable for yourself, for other people? That doesn't mean that you're going to get the life that other people have. And, that's one thing. I think focusing on the life that you don't have, that you feel like you should have or that other people have, is only going to lead to feelings of debilitation, desperation. Focusing on the things you do have, especially those things that other people don't have, and finding out what is special and unique to you and valuable that you have that other people don't have, is the way to come away feeling informed and empowered from that kind of situation.
Do you think there was ever a time in your life and on your journey to the place you're at now where the advice you just gave, you would have met it with a kind of big middle finger?
This is why I prefaced it by saying, what you're going through sucks. Like, you don't just go up to somebody who has a shitty situation and go, oh, but how is it valuable to you? You acknowledge that it sucks and that it's not fair and that other people have other things that you don't have. Something important to acknowledge is that other people also have other things that are shitty that you don't have, and maybe you're not thinking about that. And so one of those things that, and again, like when I was sitting in a prison cell, it really helped me to do that negative visualization of okay, I'm in here, I'm in prison for a crime I didn't commit, but I'm not dead. I didn't get raped and murdered. So it's not like as bad as it could be. And so remembering that like everyone has their own shitty thing is important. But that doesn't mean that everyone's shitty thing is equal. It doesn't. Like it could be that your shitty thing is shittier than other people's shitty things. Acknowledge that. And at the same time, like there is opportunity in that challenge. Like you may understand things about pain that other people just do not understand. You may understand things about paternalism and like trying to sort of figure out what you like that struggle to really truly understand what we have control over, what we don't have control over, that relationship between agency and individuality and how that gets complicated when there's like a hovering parental figure who's both loving and controlling. Like these are all like existential questions are universal questions. And it may be that you're experiencing them in an extreme way, but as a result of that, that gives you the possibility for having extraordinary insight. And so what I would suggest to that person is like really be curious about those depths of human experience that you get to explore by virtue
Mm-hmm.
of your circumstances. Because otherwise, you're just going to be experiencing the depths of those. You're not going to be exploring, you're just going to be experiencing them, and it's going to be shitty. So you might as well be exploring them while you're experiencing them and taking something from them instead of letting them just take things from you.
One of the things this guy mentioned is there's some learning issues as well, and that the ability to do deep introspection and derive insights from your life situation is also not evenly distributed and is a thing that you can lack the ability to do, right?
I don't think he's lacking the ability to do that if he's asking
No,
himself
I mean,
existential
I'm
questions.
saying that like you're
I
like,
think
oh
you're being a
well,
little paternalistic
write
right
your own
there.
best-selling book
You're
about
doing the
your
exact
pain,
thing that he's
right? It's like,
complaining
well,
about.
you're saying exploit it.
Now, I wasn't saying write a best-selling book, but I would have given a very different example I would give it in a very different response if he had not said he's asking himself existential
Okay.
questions. If
One
you are
other note I
capable of
have
asking
is
yourself
that,
existential questions,
the
then this is the
penthouse
response for you.
prison cell dichotomy, and just that you say everyone has their own shitty thing, which is true, and your shitty thing might be shittier than someone else's shitty thing. But also you can be on top of the world in every, measurable metric and still be miserable enough to kill yourself. And there's plenty of examples of people who fit that pattern, right?
Sure, because that person has a different shitty thing, which is their own brain working against them. It's just some people's shitty things are visible and some people's shitty things are invisible. So,
Sure, but I guess what I'm getting at is that life is just everything's a mental event, right? So it's possible to have debilitating medical issues or to be stuck in a prison cell and yet live a more fulfilling life than someone who on paper has none of those physical constraints, right?
right, but I wouldn't wave that in anyone's face because you're just saying, "Look, you could be happy, but you're not. What's wrong with you? You could be happy." Like, so that's not what I would suggest.
Yeah, I mean that's what the sad billionaires are saying to themselves, right? Why am I
Yeah,
not happy? All right.
yeah, they don't have a good reason to be not happy, and that is the pain of not having pain. Not having a good reason to have pain.
It reminds me of what you said before about how pain was easier in prison because at least then you had this very obvious reason why your life felt shitty. And maybe it's a weird silver lining that fits this person's situation as well, is like, at least when your life feels shitty, you have some obvious things to point to. Because there's plenty of people out there who just feel like their life sucks when all the objective measurements of how their life is going look great. And that's its own kind of hell, to feel shitty when you make lots of money and you're attractive and people like you, you know?
Yeah. No one sympathizes with that guy.
Exactly. Okay, moving on. This also comes to us from Substack. Josh Florian asks, not that I'm in any way suggesting you should, but as a topic of
Okay.
discussion.
Okay. I love the preface of this. Okay, what possibly could be coming? Not to say that you
Yeah.
should do this.
Not that I'm in any way
But
suggesting you should, but as a topic of discussion.
orgy domes.
Yeah.
Like, have you considered?
Yeah, $1 million. Yeah. Not that I'm in any way suggesting you should.
Mm-hmm.
You should get a tattoo of that. Yeah.
Right across your forehead. Yeah. Okay.
That's how you should start all your emails. But as a topic of discussion, would you consider any life in politics or public service? To be clear, I consider a lot of what you do already as a public service, but I think everyone here knows what I'm getting at.
So, politics? No. Oh God, no. I do not I do not love the hustle of a popularity contest, and so any form of politics
That's why you
just
went into
seems,
podcasting? I mean,
yeah, it's just soul crushing. I don't want to be I don't want to have to be elected in order to accomplish the things that I want to accomplish. And so no, I wouldn't go into politics because I find that whole world to be just existentially crushing and potentially corrupting.
like morally compromising.
In a way, because like I think that it's really easy to get jaded in politics, and to be successful in politics requires a certain level of psychopathy. I think that I just don't have it in me to like advocate for myself enough, like to be a successful politician. I'm just like, for me, my position is take it or leave it. Here I am. If you like what I do, great. If you don't like what I do, fine. Like, I'm not here to like convince you to empower me. I'm going to empower myself. And so I don't have I don't have a good relationship, I think, with those kinds of institutions and that kind of mentality. That said, I do think it's something that Monica actually said to me, which really stayed with me because, we were talking about what's going to happen after the show comes out, what's going on, what's next. And I asked her, like, what's your plan? And she said, well, the thing that I always ask myself is, how can I be of service? What can I do that would be me being of service? And like, that's such a political answer. And of course, like Monica has a history in politics, but I think that's a great way of thinking about it. Like, what's the next thing that I could be doing that could be helpful? Not just valuable to me, but valuable to others and helpful. So I like to think that, as you say, things that I do are helpful, and are in the service of a greater good, even if that good is not, political or institutionalized necessarily. That said, anytime anyone asks me to float down to my local capital to testify in favor of some, law change or provision, like I'll do that. Like I'm happy to be of service, especially in that capacity. But like being a professional politician sounds like utter hell to me. So
you don't think there's a version of being a successful politician that doesn't require you to say, I have the answers. Believe in me. Give me your vote.
I think that
You're like,
people don't vote for you unless you say that. I mean, if the world suddenly changed and you could go up there and say, hey, here's who I am. Here's my integrity. Here's what I think we should do, but I'm also open to ideas.
Mm-hmm.
I'm, like, I don't think I don't think it gets people riled up, you know?
Yeah, it doesn't
Like,
fan the tribal flames necessary to win in a tribal contest, right?
yeah, I'm just like opting out of that as much as
Yeah,
I
I hear you. I
can.
mean, it sounds like your approach here, it reminds me much more of the wisdom tradition you see in Buddhism and um, other areas where there's a figure of authority whose authority comes from denying authority. You know what I mean? Like the great sage who tells you on the mountaintop that he doesn't have the answers you seek, and
Right.
that's why you're
I'll be
there,
that guy.
you know?
Yeah, I'll be that guy. Um,
With your newfound and well-deserved success, what do you think will be your mix of activities between commercial projects and your work with the Innocence Project?
mm, that's a good question. I mean, one of the things that I'm trying to do this year is figure out how to do like do the best of both worlds, or like maybe make my make my cake and eat it too, where like one of the things that I'm trying to do is fundraise for the Innocence Center, which I'm on the board of, and be a good board member and fundraise, and do that by putting on a creative event. I want to do a creative entertainment event, and I want to see if I can pull that off. I've never put on a fundraising event like that before, so there's a lot of questions that I have. But in my ideal world, if money wasn't an object, I suppose I would be taking more time between projects to like really deep dive on personal creative projects instead of feeling like I have to constantly be outputting. And I think that I would be probably more invested, especially on the legislative side of innocence work. So, really trying to advocate for law changes that would protect people and spending more time doing that. But that said, like, I also would, if money wasn't an object, I would love to be, frankly, like, doing some fun stuff. Like, right now I'm actually still working on acting in a low budget sci-fi movie. Like I would be maybe like swinging for the fences more on creative things, and trying my hand at things that are less um strictly in response to like my expertise in the true crime arena. So on the one hand, I would probably be doing a little more advocacy work. On the other side, I would be doing work that would be completely different and less true crimey. Um, and I would probably just be spent doing less work, honestly. Like if money wasn't an object, I would be spending more time with my kids.
Yeah, you started this with you could have your cake and eat it too. That would be the ideal scenario. And I think a lot of the work that we already do, a lot of the projects you're involved with are having a public service element to them. It's a soft one, whether that's doing a series on false confessions that sort of raises awareness and educates about that issue, but is also a creative project that's entertaining, right? But even something like this Ask Amanda Anything episode is a piece of media that we're creating that goes out into the world as an entertainment product in a sense. But it's also one aimed at helping people lead a more fulfilling life and addressing personal questions about the struggle of just being a person in the world.
Yeah, but that doesn't directly, impact a innocence organization, right? Like in
No, and
terms
I know
of
Ken's question was directly related to Innocence work. But I'm also thinking about, I just listened to a recent Sam Harris episode about effective altruism and Peter Singer's thought experiment about the shallow pond, which I'm sure you've probably heard. Do you know this thought
no,
experiment?
I do not.
It's the idea that imagine you're walking through a park and you see a child drowning in a pond at shallow water, and you can run in and save him, except you're wearing your nicest shoes and they cost you several $100s, right? They're definitely going to get ruined if you go into the pond. Do you save the child? And the answer, of course, is yes. Anyone who didn't is a monster that we would all judge, right?
Yeah.
And then Singer says, well, you don't realize it, but you're in that same situation every day when you buy a latte at Starbucks instead of donating that money to some kid in Africa whose life or death hinges upon some outside aid. Right. And so you're always in that situation of walking past the shallow pond every day, and yet you don't do anything. And there's a sort of moral condemnation that comes with that. And there's various objections to this thought experiment. One of which is that, there's a sort of too much of a burden or too much to expect of somebody to sit there saving, children in shallow ponds day in, day out and not have any other thing that they do with their life. That's not my preferred objection to it. We won't get into all the philosophy here, but the one thing that I think matters here, and this relates to the question of effective altruism, how do you use your time in a way that is valuable to help people, is that, in a world where you maximized just your save the kid activities, just buying malaria nets for people in Africa type activities, or even just getting innocent people out of prison activities, like, are you never going to support the symphony? Do you want a world with no symphonies or art museums? Because that world depends on charity too. And I would argue that it's a much harder to measure public good to have beauty in the world. And I say this as a poet, I'm maybe justifying my own existence, but I think beauty matters. And I think that it's not as easy to put in a ledger and say, well, you're saving a life with this money. You're getting this innocent person out of prison, very obvious good, as opposed to writing a symphony or producing a, beautiful piece of writing.
I think that the sense of urgency isn't the same, but in terms of what I know, what's the most good that I can do personally, and what fulfills me, and also what am I good at? I'm not a lawyer. I'm not even a professional fundraiser. I'm a storyteller and I'm a performer, and so I try to leverage what I'm good at and what fulfills me in ways that also benefit these other things that I'm not good at, like fighting cases in court and stuff like that. So
I honestly, this comes back to that first question about the guy, with the debilitating medical condition, which is that joy is a real thing. And there are people in the world who face tremendous obstacles who still have the capacity for joy. And there are people who have every advantage and don't feel joy in their lives for some reason. And if we come to that, life is a mental event, series of mental events perspective, having joy, it seems to be one of the most important things that you could possibly have. And to that end, Michael Jackson did a lot of charity work. Do you know what I mean? Just making Thriller is a great contribution to humanity in that it brings joy. And it's maybe as important as saving people who are drowning. Is that crazy to say?
I think that might be crazy to say. Next question.
All right, fine. I think I'm right on this one. This is not a who's right, though. Okay.
This is not a who's right.
This comes to us from Adam Wybray via Substack. Did the prosecutors and media's creation of an Amanda Knox persona scapegoat ever lead you to feel a sense of self-estrangement or dysphoria? Or did you always feel connected to the self you knew to be true?
That's an interesting question. I think the most disassociated I felt was when I first got out of prison. And, in those first years, re-entering society and being constantly recognized, but recognized as an idea of me and not as who I really was. And so I always felt like, even though I knew who I was, I had no idea what other people thought I was. And I knew that they had an idea, but I just didn't know what that was. And so I felt like I was constantly on like my back foot when I was interacting with people. And it made me feel really uh, like disassociating from the rest of humanity in a way. I felt very othered. Um, and so, but like during, prison, during trial, I was still very, very grounded in who I was. And I knew exactly who I was. And it was so frustrating to have to sit there in court and listen to the prosecutors describe a version of me that I did like that didn't exist, like, and I knew didn't exist, right? And but like having to then be just a person in the world uh with an idea of me, like it that was really difficult to navigate. How do I like every it felt like every human interaction that I had was suspect and confusing and potentially dangerous. Like it was really hard.
You know, it occurs to me that one of the benefit is a weird word here, but one of the benefits of being subjected to this by a bunch of strangers, by an Italian prosecutor and media, foreign media, is that they don't know you at all. And so it's very easy for you to tell yourself, the person they're describing is not me. And what the heck do they know? They don't know me. But I think I've seen you deal with a similar version of this where a person you do know well or who knows you well, a family member or friend, if you get into conflict with them and they describe you to yourself in a way that feels not like you, you're then put in a position of saying, and this is what is a much more common experience, I think, for people than
Right.
what you
When
went through,
people
right?
project, like when people say, I've definitely been in the scenario where somebody says, "You did this," and then proceed to assume and prescribe intentionality of some kind onto me. Whether so I've been in the situation where people who I even know have accused me of things that I didn't do. But even if I like did a thing, say I made a phone call or I made a decision about who to invite to my wedding. Like people, will then project their own thoughts and feelings about what your thoughts and feelings are that motivated you to do a thing. And and so yes, I've definitely had the experience of feeling projected upon and having to like really work hard to like meticulously explain, when I called you, I was not intending to get you in
Yeah, but
trouble with
what
your
I'm
teacher,
getting at here
like,
is this sense of self estrangement or dysphoria. And correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think I've seen you have legitimate moments of that sort of feeling, of that doubt, like, oh my God, was I in the wrong here? Do I exhibit this negative pattern they're saying I have?
oh, sure.
Right.
Yeah, I'm definitely prone to like, especially if it's someone I have trusted. Um, if someone approaches me and says, this behavior and pattern is such that it reveals this thing about you that you may not even be aware of. Like, yeah, I definitely question myself. And it is an awkward moment of like unsteadiness when you notice something, when someone points out something about yourself that you didn't notice before.
Or that's potentially not true. And I think that's what's interesting here is that like the dysphoria sense comes from that's not how I perceive myself to be. And so my options are to outright reject what they're saying about me or to weigh it as legitimate information coming from someone who knows me and modify my own self perception. And it's difficult to do the latter, of course. Nobody wants to admit, oh gosh, I've been blind to my own personal failings in this way for years, right? But also, I think it's you kind of owe yourself, if you're on a long journey of self improvement, that you take such things seriously when someone who actually knows you says something like that, even if you ultimately come to the conclusion that they're wrong and they're projecting on you or whatever it is. Whereas you didn't have to take the Foxy Noxy persona seriously in any way, you know? Yeah. Well, Adam also has a lighter question, which is what/who are your favorite comedies and comedians?
Ooh. Oh, this is sad now. The Princess Bride is one of my favorite movies. And as we all know, Rob Reiner was murdered. Jesus, what the hell? So The Princess Bride and R.I.P. As in, rest in peace. And let's see, what are other, I mean, one of those comedies that is underrated and that I will uh, proselytize about for years is Pop Star, Never Stop, Never Stopping. That's again one of my favorite movies.
Amanda's a big
Um,
Lonely Island stan. I don't know
I'm
if you
I'm a
guys
big
knew that.
Lonely Island stan. I just think that movie's close to perfect. Let's see, other comedies that I love. Those are the ones that rise to the top of my thoughts. Uh, Comedians, I really like Mike Birbiglia. I like Bo Burnham. Um, I think Nikki Glazer is just a roast queen. I've never seen anyone roast like Nikki Glazer. It's just phenomenal. Let's see, who else do I like? I mean, I love Weird Al. I'm a huge Weird Al stan. Um, yeah, those are the ones off the top of my head.
All right. We're going to end it with a question from our good friend Jake. And that is, what do you think is a great question to ask someone you're meeting for the first time? Like to get a good sense
Ooh,
of them and get a good conversation going. What is
okay.
your icebreaker? What is the
This is
Amanda Knox
actually
icebreaker?
this is a genius question because it can reveal so much. So buckle up, guys. This is the question you ask when you're first meeting someone to like get a vibe. What's your worst date ever? So the reason I say this is because one, it might be just like a hilariously epic story, right? Like they've just like, my worst date ever
I
was
was just going
that,
to ask you. Yeah.
yeah. So my worst date ever was one of my earliest dates ever, um, where I was invited to go out to dinner with this other guy from a different high school. He invited me to go out to dinner, and we went to this Mexican restaurant. And I think I was 17 and he was 17. We went to this Mexican restaurant, and I noticed that while we were eating dinner, he got really quiet and he wasn't talking as much, and I was a little worried. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, he vomits like all everything that he's eaten onto his plate. Just vomits. And then mortified runs to the bathroom. And I'm just sort of like, "Oh my god. Oh my god." And the waiter comes over and he's like, "Oh, it's okay. I'll clean this up." And I'm like, "Okay, can you go in there and check and see if he's okay?" And I just sit there and I wait for him because I'm like, "Oh my god, what happened? Is he okay?" And he like takes like a good half an hour to come out of the bathroom. And when he comes out of the bathroom, he was like, "Oh my God, you're still here." And I was like, "Yeah, are you okay?" And he was like, why are you like, he was almost like sad. I was thinking, like, it was almost like he was hoping that I had left, but I was like, no,
Yeah, well, he
are
never
you?
wanted to show his face to you again. He was so embarrassed, and now he had
I
to
know.
confront you again.
I
It was
know. And
cruel
I
of
was,
you, frankly.
well, I just want to know if he was okay. And anyway, so like I think that there are like potentially funny stories that can derive from that. So, like, my date vomited right in front of me, and but like also I think that those kinds of stories can reveal what's important to a person. So what they look for in a person, what they consider a positive or negative experience, like even just the mere fact, like I could tell you a different story about a different date where it wasn't even technically a date. I just got drunk and then a guy brought me up to his room and tried to hook up with me. Like there are lots of ways that you can answer that question, and you can answer it in a really like dark, deep way, because we've all been on really bad experiences. You can answer it in a light way and use it as a funny story. But like either way, I feel like tell me the story of your worst date ever is a really great opener, because I think that it gets personal really quickly without seeming like you're trying to get personal. Um, it's a little bit like, tell me the worst experience of your life, but light, you know?
Yeah. You don't open with "Tell me the worst." You know
Yeah.
mine. I mean, I think
Yeah.
you're allowed to open with that.
I'm allowed to open with that, but you are not. So everyone's been on a date and everyone's been on a bad date. So you are allowed to open with, what's the worst date you've ever been on? And like that just, I think, sparks like intrigue and like exchange, engagement. You're a little bit already sort of being like, okay, I hear your story, but what about this story? And then that sort of, yeah, I think that's a great way to get a conversation rolling. And it's not even for a date necessarily. It's just like when you're meeting anybody. I think it's fun.
Like you imagine two dudes at a barbecue using
Oh,
that
yeah.
question.
Oh, yeah. I think that would be
Yeah.
so funny. Yeah. I mean, I don't, I'm always a little bit perplexed about what dudes do and do not talk to each other about, because every time I ask you what you talk about with your brother, like you'll say like, I'll ask, oh, did you ask him about that? And you're like, I would never talk to my brother about this. And I'm like, what? So I don't know. You confuse me
Yeah,
about
I
what
mean,
guys talk
I'm
about, but like,
also probably neuroatypical in some sense. Who knows? Like my opener question is, what do you think about super intelligent AI? You
oh
know.
my God. That is not a good question to ask. Sorry, boo. That's a good question to make people not want to talk
I
to
know.
you.
Well, I mean, it has a splitting function where it like separates out the people I don't want to talk to and helps me
But mine
identify
does
the people I
too.
do.
Mine does too, in the sense that, like, if somebody tells you, like, a really, like, I think people reveal themselves in the answering the question of what is the worst date you've ever had. Because is it like the worst date because you did a bad thing? Is it the worst date because the other person did a bad thing? How did you react to it? How did other people react to it? Like, that's, I think, more revealing and not as polarizing
Okay, well,
slash
I'm gonna.
ostracizing as a question like, what's
I just want to get into a philosophy debate with somebody at that barbecue. I don't want to talk about sports.
don't
That's
be the
yeah.
philosophy bro, dude. Like, you know better. You have evolved since your philosophy bro days. If I've had a hand in
It's
anything,
true. It's
it's
true.
making you less of an
All right, well, I'm
unrelatable
going to ask you
philosophy bro.
one meta follow-up question here, which is, let's say you were this other person at the party who had just heard your first date answer. What did it reveal about this new person you've met?
uh well, that I'm not grossed out by vomit. That's for one thing. um that I'm not gonna judge someone based upon
Hmm.
like I don't look at somebody who has a moment of like weakness or fragility as somebody that is not worth devoting my time and attention to. I
Does that
think
feel like a
is
choice that you made at some point, or have you just always been that way?
I've just always been that way. I don't I don't get grossed out by people.
Not the gross out, but just the like not judging.
I mean, it's not to say that I'm not judgy. So like I can be judgy in the sense that I sometimes, so revealing something about me, it's almost kind of better that it happened because I can sometimes get bored. I do get bored easily. So if I feel like the conversation is just existing on a superficial level, I'll get bored. I don't know. And that's not very nice.
You don't like small talk.
Yeah. And so then I might just get bored of a person, which is not a nice thing to say. You know, I don't know. So
I mean, you're not bored of a person. You're bored of a topic. You're bored of a superficiality, which is why when you and I first met, we deep dived immediately. And I think because we're both that way of like, I don't do well with small talk either. I'd much rather talk about
what's
if you've
the fuck
ever
with you?
had suicidal ideation,
Yeah.
let's go there. Right?
Yeah, let's do it. What do we got to lose, right? You only live once. How many conversations are you going to have?
About the weather,
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that'll wrap it up here for this Ask Amanda's Advice, Ask Amanda Anything episode. Thank you all for your questions. Again, if you want to reach out with questions for the next time we do this, it might be, I don't know, we're not going to do it so frequently. So stay tuned. Maybe a month or two from now, we'll do another one. But you
also,
can submit
I want to know. I want to know if anybody thinks that I'm utterly wrong about anything. I think that's fascinating. Like,
and
was
you can
that
send those.
Terrible
you can
advice?
send that hate mail through Substack as well. Just become a paying subscriber.
Or it doesn't have to be a hate mail. It's just like a finger wagging mail.
Yeah, there you go. And that's at send your messages to amandaknox.substack.com or through amandaknox.com. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.